The freedom of a Sufi, Mohammad Tijani, 93 years old. The Sufi Brotherhood of Tijaniya gathered together people of very different origins, and that was its richness. One of its members, Hajj Hussein, was a farmer from Jericho and a good friend of my family. For several decades, he had been in the habit of selling his harvest to Yaqub, a Palestinian Jewish broker. Hajj Hussein would estimate the value of his fruit and vegetable harvest and send it all to the broker, who paid him 3 or 4 months later once the stock had been sold. For this transaction, Yaqub would travel to Jericho, where he was in the habit of lunching at our house with Hajj Hussein and his wife Rashida. The 6-day war cut off his access to Jericho, but as soon as he was able, Yaqub came to see us. It was in 1968. He owed Hajj Hussein some money and wanted to honor his debt, but our farmer had died. When he learned this, Yaqub's face fell and his blue eyes turned grey. Then, taking hold of himself, he asked for news of Rashida. In one of the refugee camps in Amman, came the reply. 1,000 Jordanian dinars. Can you get them to Rashida? I took care of taking the money to the widow. 1 year later, to the day, Yaqub came back with 500 dinars to send to Rashida. This gesture gives some idea of the relations that could tie us to one another, Arab and Jewish Palestinians, even after 3 wars, that of 1948, the Suez in 1956, and the 1967 war. This story fed my hopes for decades. I can still hear my father telling me, sooner or later, justice will prevail. Remember the story of Rashida. And I believed in it, despite the sad reality which kept getting worse. Those who had lived together ended up disappearing, leaving their place to others who no longer had any recollections in common, and who, because of this, were easily manipulated. In the 1980s, I went to Al-Qatamoon with the intention of visiting the family house taken by Israel in 1948. A woman opened the door. She was Moroccan, a Moroccan Jew. In a few words, we explained that this house had been ours before 1948. Her reply left us speechless. She and her son had paid several mortgage payments. Had we received the money, it seemed that she thought that she was buying the house from its owners. Our surprise caused some uneasiness. We had never sold our house. At that moment, her son came into the room dressed in military fatigues and armed. First, he lectured his mother in Hebrew without ceremony, then turned to us and said in Arabic, "Go out, this is our house. I paid for it in my blood in this 6-day war." He was convinced that his participation in the war gave him the right to occupy a house that did not belong to him. Like millions of other immigrants are convinced that war opens up rights to property. An idea that manipulative authorities know very well how to instill in people's souls to sow destruction and hate there.